Okay, what we're talking about today is the specifications for the Mr. Manhole repair. We want to cover each aspect of this repair so we know what we're doing, how we're doing it, and the materials we're using to effect the repair, and make sure that these repairs are done the same way every time. So it's important that we understand the drawings, the material requirements, and the sequence of events. So we find the pre-existing condition where the manhole frame and lid is lower than the asphalt surrounding it, and we're trying to correct that by removing the manhole frame and lid using the Mr. Manhole cutter extractor. After removing the manhole frame and lid from the road and the surrounding road overcut is removed, and we want to make sure we get a full penetration vertical cut on this removal process. A lot of times when people use an air hammer, in fact in almost every case, they will have this cut sloped like this as opposed to being vertical. And what happens to those repairs is as freeze and thaw occurs, lateral force is pushing into that conical repair, and it causes that repair to raise up out of the ground. You see that a lot where the concrete is actually raised. And if you think about it, in a frost condition, when you've got a 1/4 of an inch frost movement and it affects this repair, it's also going to affect the road surrounding. And so you would never notice a properly done repair moving. Even though it might move up and down a little bit, it will move at the same rate the surrounding road moves. The reason this will move at a faster rate is because of lateral frost expansion from the surrounding asphalt. So it's very important to get a full vertical cut even below the asphalt pavement. The existing aggregate has to be trimmed straight down, and that's what the Mr. Manhole cutter extractor allows you to do. At the same time, you'll notice this 3-inch over excavation below the top of the cone. Very important so that we have drainage away from the bottom of the concrete repair. And after we excavate that down, further on in the repair process, we're going to add a little aggregate back in there. So we've got a nice drainage bed away from this repair. Also, if you've got a mud situation, which it's pretty rare, most of these are backfilled with stone all the way to the bottom of this manhole structure. If you find one that has mud in it at this level, we need to auger down with a 6-inch auger. We usually just carry one of those on the truck, and it'll have about a 3-foot bit on that. You can auger down till you get to the stone and then fill that hole, that augered hole. You fill that with number 57 stone, a 3/4 inch aggregate, so that it will allow this area right below the repair to drain away. And it's important that we get water to drain away from that repair. If you have standing water under that repair, you've got more of a chance of frost heaving it up and down in frost conditions. That's why we put the bentonite seal in, that water activated seal, right on top of the cone in case we get a little frost movement and there would be some water present, which typically when there's frost there's no running water, but just in case we have that water activated strip in there to keep that interface from leaking. So let's move on over here and work through this thing. Here we have the repair excavated and cleaned, and now we're ready to start the repair. I might address the top of the cone. Now this drawing shows kind of a perfect world situation where the cone is nice and flat. It's constructed of precast concrete, and that's great, and a lot of times you will encounter that. Sometimes though you'll find one where the top of the cone has a little divot or a depression in it, or it might even have a hump of some sort. What we recommend is putting your insert liner piece down on the cone initially and checking to see if you've got a high spot or a low spot, and then taking actions like grinding or filling to rectify that situation before you start the rebuild. The other thing that needs to happen at this point, you need to clean the concrete off. If we're dealing with precast concrete, you want to make sure that none of the old sealants which had bonded the previous rings down, or mortars or any of that, are there. You don't want any residues on that cone. So we'll wire brush that. We'll use an acetone to clean it up real well, wipe it down with a clean rag, make sure that it has no humps or divots, and then we'll start our rebuild. If it's a masonry structure, now you've got to pick an appropriate level to take the masonry down to, because there's no clear line of demarcation between the cone and the chimney section. You'll have to pick one so that you've got a decent sized piece of liner in there. You're shooting for 5+ inches of liner material. So if you've got a 7-inch casting and lid apparatus and 5 inches of liner material, that's going to put you roughly 12 inches below the road, and that's pretty much what we're shooting for typically. So you find the appropriate masonry joint to go to, remove enough material to get to that joint, and then you may have to grind the masonry flat so you've got something to start on. Now, in a situation where you've got a masonry manhole that cones out rather quickly, you may find that you're down in this area so you're getting bigger than your liner once you get down to the level you're going to go to. What you want to do there is take a precast concrete ring, about a 2-inch height concrete ring, and you'll make a reducer out of that, and you'll grout that to the top of that cone, and then you'll start your rebuild off of that precast masonry. Once you start the rebuild, you want to start right here at the cone level. We're going to cut it to the proper height and slope, and you're going to take your piece of insert liner, put a liberal amount of the white sealant, it's a urethane sealant, to the bottom of the insert liner, and then turn it over and press it down onto the cone, making sure that you've got no wobbling or voids under that liner. If you've got any voids, you want to fill those with the urethane sealant and wipe it in on the inside. You want to let it squish out on the outside. That's important because it's going to help bond the next seal on. You need to make sure you put enough sealer on there so that it'll bond the water stop when you put that on. Next thing we do is we move to the water stop. We press it in. It has an angled edge on each edge of that, and you want to press those angles in so it's laying on a 45-degree angle. There's a little blow up of the water stop. It should lay crossways like a 45-degree, and you press it in. When you wrap that bentonite around this repair, there will be a joint where the two ends come together. Knead it together so that you've got a secure seal. Then we'll put another liberal amount of the white sealant at the top of the insert liner after the cut, and place the manhole frame back on to the insert liner and check across the top with a level. You check with the line of traffic. Now we want to make sure that we've got some 3/4 inch aggregate right in this area. Remember how we over excavated on the preparing and removing process. That was why we took it down 3 inches. Now we're going to put the 3/4 inch aggregate in. Sometimes you'll find a manhole that the aggregate's already there. If that's the case, no need to excavate. If it's muddy or you're unsure about drainage, go ahead and do this step right here. When you put that aggregate in, don't come all the way to the top of the cone. Leave it down a 1/2 inch or so, because we want concrete to lock over that edge just a little bit so we don't get lateral movement, shifting of this repair. You can see the epoxy coated rebars and where they're placed in the drawing. Follow those directions. This is going to keep the concrete in one piece, which makes this repair more secure. It's going to keep water from migrating through any cracking that may occur in this, and it will keep the insert liner from being shifted on the top of the manhole. So observe the placement of your rebars. I might add, the rebars are not in a specific diameter when they come to you. They have an overlap and it's variable. So you want to select the right diameter for the cut you're making, and the cuts vary because of the different frame sizes. And to achieve this rebar placement that's shown on the drawing, you have to change that overlap and tie those securely with a couple wire ties on each re-rod ring. When you get to the top of the repair with the pouring process, you want to vibrate adequately to get concrete under the manhole frame. That is becoming your cast in place epoxy rebar reinforced adjusting ring, perfectly sized for this manhole that you're repairing. The area above the flange is the collar, and the reason we specify concrete all the way to the surface as a collar: concrete does not dip or cup like asphalt does, and it doesn't get humped up, because when you're putting in asphalt, if you get a little bit too much in, you can roll all you want, but you're going to have a hump between the edge of the flange and the edge of the cut, and that's going to translate into a bump with traffic, cause bumping and then impact loads on this frame that are unnecessary. So when you pour this concrete, make sure to get it flat from the edge of the cut over to the edge of the frame, and then we dye that black with dye that we provide in our material packages. And I might add that all the material we're specifying here comes in the Mr. Manhole material packages. They're packaged in units of 20 manholes each, and they'll have everything you need except for the ready mix concrete and the concrete sealer that we spray right on top of the concrete after the repair. Everything else is included in there. After you've poured the concrete and put a nice brush finish on that black surface, then the next step is to fill this void with the Brewer Coat pourable asphalt seal that we provide with the material packages. We want to make sure we get a 3/4 inch edge on that concrete to create a groove for that sealant to flow into. Pour that sealant in a sufficient amount to seal that crack. The next step then is to apply the medium solids concrete sealant. A UCO product will work well, like Res Seal. Spray that repair and then cover it with the Mr. Manhole poly cover disc, which is going to slow down the hydration process and give you a high quality repair. All of your slumps and so forth are in the specification. The concrete mix designs are in there. All the material is very well spelled out in the specification. So you need to study this and understand it. Follow this repair method to the T, and you'll get a repair that will last every time.